Although recent weather-related disasters have caused climate change activists to warn of pending doom for humanity if we don't alter our behavior, in reality, the human race may face extinction because of a population crisis. People in many countries worldwide aren't having enough babies. Dale Hurd explains.
Empty playgrounds, schools without enough students to stay open, small towns deserted and abandoned. This is not some dystopian vision of the future. Demographers warn this is our future. Global population growth is leveling off, and by the second half of this century could begin to shrink for the first time since the bubonic plague struck the world almost 700 years ago.
Everything that we understand that functions in our societies today that depends on people, which is almost everything, is going to change.
Stephen J. Shaw is a data scientist, demographer, and producer of the film Birth Gap. He spoke to us from his home in Japan, one of the nations at the forefront of this global demographic collapse. Shaw told us he made the documentary mostly out of fear.
Fear of the future that we're, as a planet, completely unprepared for and mostly unaware of.
Taxes could soar as economies shrink. The many elderly could cause retirement and medical systems to collapse. Businesses will struggle to find employees, and there won't be enough young to care for the old.
That means sporadically you're going to have housing that's left desolate, you're going to have stores that are empty, you're going to have places with fewer and fewer employees, fewer customers. You're talking of decimations of communities, you're talking of closed schools, you're talking of closed hospitals.
A nation needs an average fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman to keep its population from shrinking. The countries on this map in some shade of blue all fall below that replacement rate. They include 70% of the global population in almost every developed nation. The U.S. fertility rate hit a new record low last year, dropping to 1.62 births per woman, a number temporarily offset by record numbers of illegal immigrants. In his film, Shaw explains how fewer children from fewer and fewer mothers creates a cascading effect, leading to a downward spiral from which Shaw says no known civilization has ever recovered.
This thing is going to be like a snowball rolling downhill. It's just going to keep building.
Daryl Bricker is global CEO of the polling firm Ipsos Public Affairs and co-author of Empty Planet, The Shock of Global Population Decline.
The top reason for people not having children is they just don't want them. That's the main reason people are not having children. The second reason tends to be related to their ability to have children, whether it's the relationship that they're in or the personal circumstances they find themselves in, or their physical ability to have children.
Shaw calls it unplanned childlessness, linked to delayed parenthood.
People trying or wanting to start families well into their 30s, when frankly biology isn't going to help necessarily. Biological challenges start around that time, but there's a bigger problem. Often people looking to start families in the 30s aren't in stable relationships. They've gone through a breakup, they don't have a partner, their partner's not on the right page at the right time. It doesn't get easier to find that magical moment.
Government incentive programs to encourage larger families have seen only limited success. Shaw warns that nations with the lowest fertility rates could see their populations cut in half in as few as 2 generations.
No society's ever come out of this.
The future doesn't have to look like this, but Shaw said we've got to start talking about it.
Here with more insights on this important subject is CBN News senior correspondent Dale Hurd. Okay, Dale, you end that story saying we've got to start talking about this population crisis. So why aren't we talking about it?
Good question. I think we've been brainwashed. We've heard our whole lives about the population bomb, that more people is a problem, when in fact it's not the problem. We know that more people means more solutions to problems, more creativity, more wealth. People create wealth. But we've had this hammered into us that more people is bad, and I just don't think people are used to the whole idea that the population is going to shrink. On
your map, in addition to Japan, you show China highlighted in blue. So tell us more about what's happening in China. I always thought it was the most populous country in the world, but not enough people?
I just have to say to the Chinese Communist Party, mission accomplished. Okay, they told their nation that you only need one child, if that. And guess what? It worked. And now China is facing a demographic nightmare in which in 15 years, China could have more elderly people than the entire U.S. population, 400 million. China is going to age into irrelevance before it becomes a superpower. This will not be the Chinese century because you have young people. They've had this message hammered into them against children, against family, and guess what? They're not interested in children and they're not interested in family.
Is it true that North Koreans are having more babies than South Koreans?
Yes, and North Korea is only half the size, half the population of South Korea, so I don't know that they're going to outpopulate South Korea, but South Korea is, their replacement rate or their birth rate is at 0.8, which is one of the lowest in the world, and North Korea's is double that. Now, what does that tell us? That it's not about economics, and it might not even be about the political stresses in your environment. It's a choice, and the South Koreans are choosing to not have children.
You and I have reported extensively about the effect of mass immigration on Europe, also right here in the U.S. So is immigration a good thing to save countries like the United States from going extinct?
No, you're changing the population. And I should add, which I did not include in this story, but could have, that, I mean, there are movements in Christian circles, in Jewish circles, to have more children. And that's great. But that's not going to be enough to change significantly the problem, for instance, in the United States, where we're below the replacement rate. But you need a societal turn in the attitude toward children, and that's just not there yet.
Well, economic concerns, right, about not having children, but what about abortion? Today here in this country, you can get a pill delivered in the mail. You can risk your health by aborting your baby at home. So what role does abortion play in all of this, Dale?
You know, it's the most tragic and most graphic expression of the issue, which is, as one of my experts said, people simply don't want to have children. Enough people don't want to have children, and that's why they're not having them. You know, a missionary in France, in talking about the problem there with the birth rate, he said it was hedonism. People don't want to sacrifice this or that, a house or a car or a career, for children. It's a choice they make, and we will pay the price for it. Our children especially, and our grandchildren will pay the price.
Yeah, all you have to do is go to the book of Genesis repeatedly, be fruitful and multiply. That's God's plan, be fruitful and multiply. So what can governments do beyond financial incentives?
Not a whole lot. And you know, financial incentives maybe have been oversold, because even in Hungary, which has amazing incentives for increased numbers of children and families, they're still below replacement level. And so you really can't make people do what they don't want to do.
Okay, Dale Hurd, thought-provoking information there. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Sure.